There is no scandal at the beginning of this story. No disappearance. No public rejection. Nothing breaks. What changes is quieter than that. In this imagined moment, Dilraba Dilmurat is still visible everywhere. Projects continue. Endorsements remain intact. Invitations arrive on time. From the outside, her career appears complete. But inside that completeness, something begins to feel sealed. Each new opportunity resembles the last not because of failure, but because of precision. Everything works exactly as designed. And that is where the discomfort starts. Stability, once a reward, becomes a boundary. The system no longer asks what she could become, only whether she can continue being who she already is. Choices arrive pre-filtered. Scripts feel familiar before they are read. Risk is absent not because it is forbidden, but because it is unnecessary. This is the moment when success stops expanding and starts repeating itself. In C-biz, this realization rarely comes with urgency. There is no external pressure to change. No incentive to disrupt a formula that continues to generate value. Which is precisely why the question becomes harder to answer. If nothing is wrong, why move at all? For Dilraba, choosing risk would not be an act of rebellion. It would be an act of refusal, the refusal to let stability define the limits of growth. But making that choice requires recognizing something the system never says out loud. That staying safe too long can quietly close doors that have not yet been tested. This is where the what if begins. Not with collapse, but with the realization that comfort, left unchecked, can become the most restrictive force of all. In this scenario, choosing risk does not begin with a bold announcement or a dramatic role change. In C-biz, risk is rarely visible at first. It operates beneath the surface in the quiet. Recalibration of how the system responds. Risk means stepping outside predictability. For Dilraba, it would not simply involve taking on a darker character or a more complex script. Those choices alone can still be absorbed by the system if they are packaged correctly. Real risk begins when outcomes can no longer be confidently forecast, when ratings, brand alignment, and audience reaction become uncertain. This is where the industry grows cautious. C-biz is structured around controllable variables. Traffic can be measured. Image can be managed. Public response can be guided. Risk threatens all three at once. It introduces ambiguity into a system that prizes clarity and stability above experimentation. If Dilraba were to pursue roles that resist simplification, projects without guaranteed platforms, directors without proven commercial formulas, narratives that complicate her image rather than reinforce it, she would not be punished outright. Instead, support would thin, protection would soften, decisions that were once automatic would become conditional. This is the unspoken cost of risk. It removes certainty not only for the actor, but for everyone invested in her. In this imagined turn, Dilraba would discover that risk in C-biz is less about courage and more about endurance. It is the willingness to move forward without the usual assurances, to accept that visibility may fluctuate, reception may divide, and progress may not be immediately legible. Choosing risk does not guarantee transformation. It guarantees only one thing: the system will stop holding the path steady for you. And once that happens, every step forward must be taken without a map. Before Dilraba could move toward risk, she would first have to stop accepting comfort. In C-biz, transformation rarely begins with what an actor chooses. It begins with what they decline. The safest roles arrive first and most often. Familiar genres, guaranteed platforms, characters designed to reinforce an image that already works. These offers do not signal stagnation. They signal trust. And turning them down quietly unsettles that trust. Refusal in this system is not neutral. By declining roles that promise stability, projects calibrated for traffic, scripts written to flatter rather than challenge, Dilraba would be doing more than narrowing her options. She would be interrupting a pattern the industry relies on. Each refusal introduces friction, forcing producers and platforms to reconsider assumptions they no longer question. This is where risk becomes visible. Opportunities would not vanish overnight, but they would change in tone. Invitations would become less frequent, more tentative. Conversations would shift from certainty to negotiation. The system, accustomed to her reliability, would begin to test how far her boundaries extend. What makes this stage difficult is its ambiguity. There is no immediate reward for saying no. No applause for restraint. Only the gradual loss of ease. But this loss is essential. Without it, nothing else can move. In this imagined path, Dilraba's first step toward reinvention would not be a daring performance. It would be the decision to leave familiar ground, knowing that once comfort is refused, the system will no longer rush to replace it. This is the quiet threshold where intention becomes irreversible. Every long-term star in Cbiz operates under an unspoken agreement. As long as the image remains stable, the system offers protection, access, and continuity. This is not written down, but it is understood by everyone involved. In choosing risk, Dilraba would be stepping outside that agreement. Breaking the image contract does not provoke immediate backlash. There are no public warnings, no official rejections. Instead, the system responds by withdrawing its certainty. Projects move more slowly. Offers arrive with more conditions attached. The margin for error narrows. This shift is subtle but decisive. Once an actor signals unpredictability, the industry recalculates. Casting decisions that were once automatic now require justification. Brand alignment becomes cautious. Media framing grows more reserved. None of this reads as punishment. It reads as distance. What makes this stage costly is that it removes the buffer that once absorbed mistakes. When the image was stable, missteps could be contextualized. After the contract breaks, each decision carries more weight, more scrutiny, more consequence. In this imagined scenario, Dilraba would find herself operating without the soft guardrails that once surrounded her. The freedom to change comes paired with exposure. The system no longer rushes to stabilize the narrative. Risk at this point stops being theoretical. It becomes structural. And once the contract is broken, there is no simple way to return to how things were. Once the image contract is broken, failure is no longer hypothetical. It becomes almost inevitable. In this imagined path, not every choice Dilraba makes would land as intended. Some projects would underperform. Some performances would divide audiences rather than unite them. Critical response might be mixed, uncertain, even dismissive. And for the first time in her career, success would stop feeling guaranteed. In Cbiz, this kind of failure carries a specific weight. It strips away the assumption of inevitability. It reveals that popularity can fluctuate, that protection can thin, that stability was never permanent. But paradoxically, this exposure creates something she did not have before: narrative permission. Failure changes how an actor is allowed to be seen. When a career stumbles, the system becomes willing to reframe it. Ambition is no longer suspicious. It becomes understandable. Risk-taking is no longer deviation. It becomes explanation. A failed project provides context for experimentation in a way uninterrupted success never can. This is why failure functions as currency. It buys space. It legitimizes change. It creates the rationale the system needs to tolerate reinvention. In this scenario, Dilraba's missteps would not erase her value, but they would alter its shape. She would no longer be protected by predictability. Instead, she would be evaluated by intention and trajectory. Failure here is not the opposite of progress. It is the mechanism that makes progress structurally possible. After risk is taken and failure is absorbed, the question that remains is not personal. It is systemic. In this imagined outcome, Dilraba has stepped outside stability, endured uncertainty, and allowed her image to fracture. The industry has watched, not intervened, but observed. And now, the system must decide whether to recalibrate its relationship with her. Cbiz does not reward risk. Automatically, it rewards coherence. If reinvention appears purposeful, if the narrative of change becomes legible, the system may allow a new position to form. Not a return to safety, but an adjusted role with different expectations. Yet this acceptance is conditional. The system does not ask whether the risk was brave. It asks whether the result can be managed, whether audiences can be guided into a new understanding, whether the shift strengthens the broader structure rather than destabilizing it. In this scenario, Dilraba's future would depend less on any single performance than on the consistency of her direction. Reinvention must persist long enough to be recognized as intent, not impulse. The outcome remains unresolved by design. The what-if does not promise redemption or downfall. It exposes the limits of agency within Cbiz. Even when an actor chooses risk, the final decision belongs to the system. And that is the true dilemma. Not whether Dilraba could become different, but whether the industry would ever fully allow her to stay that way.